operating leverage, and as a result, we will be able to break even relatively quickly. Overall, due to competitive margins in the industry, a licensing agreement with our patent holder, and the ability to outsource, SweetSpot has a very attractive economic model that is highly favorable for the firm's operations. And now I'd like to hand it off to David to speak about financials.
It is our belief that any expenses that we must incur should be used for productive purposes or to generate sales. It is because of this philosophy we have decided not to spend money on fancy office furniture, high salaries, or other materialistic goods that really don't help us grow. Behind me, you can see that we expect 61% of our expenses in our first year to come from advertising. Using a conservative capture analysis, we have determined that the cost of each marketing campaign will generate more sales than the cost of the campaign itself. Now, our salaries seem like they're a high percentage of our expenses. However, that includes the annual salary paid to the patent holder to stay on board as a consultant. Because of the high margins you heard earlier, we expect to break even relatively quickly. We expect to break even in June of our first year. Behind me, you can see the green line represents our total sales over a 5-year period. The red line represents our total costs, and the blue line represents our fixed costs over the same period. Because of our licensing agreement with the patent holder, we feel our sales are not only sustainable, but also very well protected from competitors. Behind me, the blue line represents sales, the blue line represents cost of goods sold, the red line represents sales, and the green line represents our total expenses. The difference between the blue and the red lines is our gross margin, and the difference between the red and our green lines is our net income over a 5-year period. Since we are selling to 4 different customers at 4 different price points, we expect 97% of our sales to come from our website, which will have the highest markup. Because of this sales mix, we expect our weighted average markup per unit to be 643%. Sales and net income are expected to grow by over 200% in the 5-year period, and we expect our average gross margin to be 75%. What we are asking for is a $600,000 angel investment in exchange for 30% ownership stake in our company and seats in our board. During the first 2 years of operations, we will be distributing 35% of our earnings in cash to our investors to help pay for the additional income tax they will incur, as SweetSpot will be registered as an S corporation that acts as a flow-through entity. During years 3, 4, and 5, we'll be distributing an additional 5% of our earnings as a token of our appreciation. At the end of year 5, we plan to buy out our investors at $5.3 million, yielding a 796% return for our investors. Should our investors decide to stay on board after year 5, we'd be certainly willing to negotiate future equity options with our investors. As I expected, my coffee is too cold, unenjoyable, and no longer at the sweet spot. We thank you for your time and would like to open the floor to any questions.
Why an S corp?
Because we were considering doing a
Why not a C?
we were considering doing a C corp, and the only reason we would have done a C corp is if we expected losses in the beginning, they would have been able to carry forward, but we didn't. And we know that S corps don't pay income tax, and that's also why we distributed the cash to help our investors pay for the additional income tax.
You did a great job with that, but why not be a C? And isn't the numbers you're talking about, aren't the tax rates for a C corp look cheaper than that of an individual tax rate?
Well, currently, corporate tax rates are higher than individual tax rates, as far as I've been told. And at this point, we don't expect to take on more than 100 shareholders, so a C corp status wasn't necessary. But pending further legislation that they may bring down the highest corporate tax rate, we may convert to a C corp.
I think the highest corporate tax rate is still lower than the highest personal tax rate. That aside, I also noticed that you incorporated in Delaware.
Yes.
Why not? Why not New York?
We incorporated in Delaware because we know that they're very friendly to businesses. They have a lot of, they're used to, their courts are very used to complex litigations, and should we decide to switch to a C corp, they have the lowest corporate tax rate in the states. They have no sales tax, and overall, I've been advised that
Most of your sales are going to be in New York State, isn't it, where you pay the state income tax and the actual state where you make the sale?
well, we wouldn't be paying state income tax. The sweet spot wouldn't be paying.
Well, because you're an S corporation. Right. But where do you live?
We're all
in Delaware, do you?
We're off in the New York tri-state area.
Why not make it a New York corporation? New
Because-
York courts, by the way, are pretty used to litigation in New York also.
I'm sure they are.
Okay. Liability issues. What happens if I get burned with that? Very famous case with McDonald's, right?
Yeah,
You're going to avoid that?
We would have a
because of your
disclaimer.
technology?
we would have a disclaimer.
Is that disclaimer going to protect you?
Yes.
Think so?
I mean, anyone can sue for anything.
What are you going to do in lieu of that?
In lieu of,
Have insurance?
we have liability insurance built into our financials, and we have a legal team built on staff.
Excellent. The whole marketing thing doesn't make sense to me. Your target market are commuters on trains and subway systems in New York City, yet we're going to use Wall Street Journal, few other things that I didn't understand, and then you told me that most of your sales are gonna come from the internet, but I didn't see any internet advertising, Google ads or anything like that. When we target our market and find that?
We thought that internet advertising isn't the best way to advertise because most people don't look at banner ads on the internet, they've kind of blocked them out. The Wall Street Journal is something that commuters read on the train, so it'd be something that
How about the Post Times?
those are also things they would read on the train, but we wanted to go with just one for the first 5 years.
Also,
Where would, and also you said you're gonna go to retailers, but how do I get one of these? I see it somewhere and I really want one of those, and I go to the internet and buy it? Am I gonna go to Target? Am I gonna go to Walmart? Where am I gonna get this?
initially you'd buy it from our website at first. Currently, the only boutique that's expressed interest we've reached out to is Bonjour out on the West Coast in LA. But we do plan on attending annual buyers meeting of a Crate and Barrel type store to sell to retailers as well. And our trade shows will help with that also.
Do you have a prototype?
We do not have a prototype.
Thanks.
You're incorporated in Delaware because of litigation, you expect to get sued?
We do not expect to get sued, but I was advised by other people that it's most friendly to businesses to incorporate in Delaware, and you don't actually have to have a presence in Delaware to do so.
Referring to your income statement, either the revised one or the one you originally started with, you indicate a 75% gross profit from year 2 to year 5. Is that consistent with durable goods, retail?
Well, we took an average to the gross margin that I calculated was done by taking an average of our sales and an average of our cost of goods sold.
I know how to calculate it. What I'm saying is 75% realistic based on your industry. Is there any other companies in your industry that achieve 75% gross profit?
Well, it's a little hard to tell because companies that sell coffee mugs aren't publicly traded, so the information isn't readily available. And companies like Starbucks that are publicly traded, their coffee mug sales are not a separate item. In their 10Ks, they're built into sales, so we really don't know.
Okay, what are you gonna buy your mug for?
$2 is going to cost us to make.
Yeah, okay. You had $1,000 a year in insurance,
Yes.
okay, and from 3.3 million to 8.1 million. You're gonna get liability insurance for $1,000?
Well, realistically, that number will probably have to increase over time. That was the quote that we got from State Farm, given the expected
What volume of
size.
sales?
We didn't give them volume sales, we asked.
How did they give you a liability quote on a business without volume of sales?
This was just liability insurance they quoted for a five-team business, a five-member business operating out of a warehouse in Long Island City, New York.
Okay. You start with operating expenses of 33%, and you reduce them to 28%, even though you're 2.5 times increase in sales.
It's a percent of sales, but our sales are increasing faster than our expenses, and that's where the percentage seems to drop.
Okay, and is that consistent with the industry, or you don't have any industry data on that either?
Well, it's pretty tough to do industry data on this. The actual industry
Did
of
you look at a housewares company, somebody just sells housewares?
Well,
I mean, it's a similar type of product.
yeah.
All right, I direct your attention to your revised cash flow, which is in some respects the same as your original cash flow. You start your cash flow analysis with net income instead of adjusted cash flow that you put forth on your cash flow analysis. Is there a reason why you did that?
Well, as far as I've learned, when you start a cash flow statement, you start with net income.
Okay.
The indirect method.
That's right, cash flow, and then you go to your valuation, you start with net income again, but you're using discounted cash flows.
Yes, we did a free cash flow to equity holders valuation, which starts with net income and adjusts net income back to the cash flow available for equity holders.
Yeah, but the numbers that you have don't tie up what the cash flow is. Cash flow in year 5 was $2,099,000, and you have cash flow here, free cash flow to investors of 3.6.
Because there's a difference between cash flow from cash flow and cash flow statement to a FCFE cash flow. FCFE cash flow takes into consideration all the cash flow that's left over after operating the business for investors, so the numbers would not be the same,
Well,
as far as I've learned from my courses.
I don't see this as being pulled because you're paying out a great deal of your cash to the investors to cover their income tax liability.
Yes.
And you've indicated a 5-year payout here, $5.3 million.
Yes.
And what does that consist of?
That's the free cash was available to equity holders in year 5 plus the horizon value multiplied by the 30% ownership stake that our investors would have. If you look at the valuation page, I believe it is on the last page.
Yeah, I see that. So you're saying that's an additional payout that you're